Hey friends, so I want to share with you how I made the My Big Fat Mouth Mona Beanie from the TV show Half and Half, where Mona and her mother are at the ATM, and it looks to me to be a type of knit beanie. It's possibly worked from the bottom up, but I'm gonna work from the top down. So I'm starting with a magic circle, and I'll chain one. And I always work 10 to 12 double crochets, if not single crochets, into my magic circle for the beanie. So today I will choose 12. It's a highly textured hat, but I don't believe that it is a crochet hat. So this will be my crochet version. So I will insert 12 double crochets into the magic circle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Then I will close it, and I always pull mine pretty tight. And then I find that first stitch here so that I can slip stitch and start a new row. So yes, this pattern is an intermediate pattern, and I do hope you enjoy it. So for the second row, I made a chain, and I'm going to insert 2 double crochets into the first chain, and I always start off going big, and I weave in my tail as I go. I just lay it over here. So that was 2, and then going big I go 3, and then 2, looks like I snagged my own hand, and then 3, and I will continue just so until the end of the row. And so I will meet you right back. So now I'm coming to the end of the row. Let's see, that's going to be 3. And then there's one last one. So then I will slip stitch into this first stitch, not chain, because remember I only chained the 1, and then I continue to carry that yarn in, slip stitch. Now this time I still want it to expand quite a bit, so I'm going to work into that very next stitch. 1 double crochet, and then 2. And then 1, and then 2. Now, like Mona, I have really big hair. And it's a lot of fun, but sometimes wearing hats, I don't always want to pull my hair back to fit it in the hat, because that's all it really takes, is just to pull my hair back to fit it in. But I don't want to do that. I just want to grab one sometimes, just pull it on and go. So I'm going to make this hat in a larger style like Mona's is to fit my big head of hair. So now we are at the end of the row, and I will slip stitch here into this first stitch. Chain 1 and continue in that same pattern as the previous row. And I will basically do that until I have the circumference that I want for my crown. So I'll meet you back here when I'm there. So I have finished the one row, and as you can see here, it's starting to have a bit of a ripple, and that's fine because I need extra room at the top of my beanie. So from the magic circle, I have worked 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, and the first 2 rows I had a pattern, and then the third row, since the third row, this one, it has been the pattern of 2 double crochets in one stitch and 1 double crochet in the next, 2 double crochet, 1 double crochet. So I've worked that the third row, fourth row, and fifth row. Now I will work another pattern of stitches now because this part of the crown, it's going to continue to increase. Even if I worked one single double crochet in this round, it's probably going to increase to about this much, but I still want it a little bit wider than that for my Mona beanie. So I am going to work 1 double crochet into the next 2, 3, 4, 5, into the next 10 rows, 5, 6, no, into the next 9 stitches, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. On the 10th stitch, I will insert 2 double crochets. So once again, I will work 1 double crochet into the next 9 stitches, and then insert 2 double crochets into the 10th stitch. And when this row is completed in that pattern, I will meet you back to slip stitch it. But I do want to say I've now worked 20 stitches, and as you can see here, it's starting to form some shape to show that the stitches are not going to increase much after this. But once again, I mentioned that I want mine to be fairly large across the top of my head for my fro. So I'm going to continue to the end of the row, but I did want to make that note of that, that the stitches are not actually decreasing, but they're not increasing as much. So you will see it start to form more of a curving shape that's pretty much going to set where the top of the crown will be, and catch that width. And this is how I'll meet you at the end of the row. So that is the end of the row, and if you look back at pictures of Mona's beanie, it had quite a bit of a ruffle on top of it, so that's why I chose to go with the double crochet and the increase as much as I did, because I still want a bit of the ruffle when I fit it on top of my head. So now we are going to start with we're going to end the increases. And what I've decided to do for that is do a single crochet in the back loop of each stitch, And the reason that I choose the single crochet is because it starts to give it that drop curve, and I think I noticed in the picture there's also a line that starts a pattern on Mona's beanie. It looks kind of sort of like a wave, and then it looks like the stitches go into like a shell, like shells, but it's just so hard to tell from the video. But I'm going to try to capture that same texture. So now we are going to stop the increase and form that cute little wave that's toward the top of Mona's beanie. So that's just a single crochet into the back loop of each stitch until you get to the end, where we will slip stitch into the first stitch and chain one. So I'll meet you back there. So what we will do now is we will double crochet into the first stitch and double crochet into the next and go all around, all the way around. This row. Yes. Let's go all the way around this row. And you can see here is where the hat begins to, or beanie, begins to drop. Right here. So this circumference should match the size that you want around your crown, and my extra are in my ripples. And so the increase has stopped, and now we are forming the rest of the top down of the hat. No more increases. And you can see the definition in this particular stitch after that single crochet stitch. So I will insert one double crochet into each stitch all the way around and come back and meet you at the end of the row. Chain one, double crochet into the first stitch, single crochet into the next stitch, and let's make a puff stitch of 1, 2, into the next, and then single crochet into the next. Correct. And pop the puff out, and then double crochet into the next, single crochet into the next, puff stitch, into the next, pop it out, single crochet with the pop, and that will give us those nice subtle bobbles that we see in Mona's hat at the top. So then that was a single, double, single, puff, single, oops, single, pop it out, double, single, puff. And we will continue this pattern until the end of the row, and I will meet you back there. So I'll do a double crochet, single, then I'm going to do a double, and a single, and a single. Actually, I'm going to put a puff. Okay, another single. Okay, so it'd probably be best if I just worked singles and did puffs. Okay, puff, stitch, single. Okay, I'm liking this. Single, single, put a puff here, single, 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 puff. Single, 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 puff. So I'll continue this pattern and meet you at the end of the row. So I'm at the end of the row. I had to grab a stitch marker really quick because it started to blend, doing the single crochet start to blend in with the row. If you can see here, I almost lost my place. So I'm finishing up the very end of the row. I can remove my stitch marker because now I know where I am. Got lost for a minute. And I am going to put a puff stitch in the very last stitch of this row, and then slip stitch into the first stitch of the row, and give my puffs a push so they can really stand out. And I'm really liking this texture that I'm seeing. It's so pretty. Okay. Let me take a look. Another row of puffs. 1, 2, 3. I'll make 2 more rows of puffs, and then we'll create this line that you can see right here. So I'm going to continue the next row with, actually I'll start with a chained 1, and then a single crochet, and then the very next stitch I'm going to make a puff stitch, give it a pop, and then single crochet, single crochet, single crochet, and single crochet, and then here is where I will put a puff stitch. Now, I'm not sure if you could tell from the photos, but it seemed that the puff stitches were really close. Now, in my opinion, I prefer not to make it that way because I don't think with the puff stitches being so close, it will have the exact look and definition that I'm looking for the tiny puffs to stand out. So I'm not going to make my puffs that close together. But I do want to maintain the essence. I do want to maintain the essence of the beanie by making several puff stitches, and I'm hoping that the more that I make, the more that you'll see, and they'll have a very similar sequence to what I'm seeing in the photo, what I'm seeing in the show. But it won't be exact because this is crochet, and this crochet version is mimicking the knit, and it won't ever be exact because there are 2 different techniques of using the yarn. And I like to give my my puffs a little push to pop them out on the previous rows as I'm working. They're just so cute. I love puffs and baubles. But I am going to continue this pattern for 2 more rows. And I will see you when I have finished the 2 rows. I'm definitely going to need a stitch marker here. So, I'll see you in a bit. So now I'm nearing the now I'm nearing the end of my row, and I am going to slip stitch into the first stitch of my row. Then I'm going to move my stitch marker up. Actually, I'm going to chain 1 first, and I'm getting ready to make another one of these lines. So for this next row, I'm going to take a look at the picture once more. So in this next row, I want to create this line, and then I'll do 2 rows of double crochets before I get to the thick chunky baubles. Yeah. So I'm going to work a single crochet in the back loop of each stitch. And this is starting to blend, so I definitely, one row's blending into the next, I definitely need to put a stitch marker at my starting stitch of this row. So just single crochets in the back loop of each stitch until we get to the end of the row. And I'll see you there. Okay, so I've made it to the end of my row, and I'm going to slip stitch into that first stitch to end the row, and this is where we are now. I am loving, loving, loving it. So here we have that line of demarcation. I'm just kidding. So here we have that line that we see in the video, and it's going to be even more pronounced when we begin to work double crochets into each stitch across this next row. This is such a nice texture. I'm really enjoying this yarn. I thought it was going to be a big splitty mess, but it's not. And not to be so chatty, but the furls hook is more like an inline hook. It's kind of a cross between a Susan Bates and a boy. And this is wood. I am not very crazy about using wooden hooks because a lot of times they slow us down. But this particular yarn is so slippery, it just wouldn't stay on my metal hooks. Now I want to check out the texture and see if it's what I'm looking for. Yes, I can definitely see the line. It's not as pronounced as this one, but I can see it. Yeah, so I will continue on. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this furls hook, and it matches my project. Ha 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 ha. Don't you always love it? But yes, I found this yarn at my local yarn store, Berroco Comfort. It's really nice, and I think the reason it's so slick or sleek is because of the nylon blend and the acrylic blend. But it's so thin and so fine, I think it won't overheat me too much. So I'm pretty excited about wearing it. I really am. A pretty beautiful, beautiful yarn. And the color that I'm seeing is very close to what you're seeing. What's coming up on camera is more like a purplish, but this is a deep red cranberry. So if you were to open a can of cranberry and plop it out, because you know, it doesn't pour out, it doesn't slide out, you have to plop it out. It's this same exact color. It's really pretty. But then it is called Beet. So yeah, it's a beet color, but also cranberry color. It's really, really pretty. Really, really pretty. Hence the reason why I could not resist purchasing it. But yeah, even with all these plies, it's not a snag fest. And I'm very happy about that. It feels very good too. That's what really won me over, was how soft it feels. And I know I'm going to get a lot of wear, a whole lot of wear out of this one. And I needed something that I might have to wash pretty often. So I'm happy to go with a synthetic fiber in this case. So I'll finish up this row and I will meet you at the end. So I've made it to the end of the row, and I just want to double check and see. So I'm going to make one more row of double crochet before I enter into the thick bobbles, and then it will be a double crochet and then that cute little wave, and then a double crochet row, and then the thick bobbles, and then I'll probably do, oh, I see another line, 2 more double crochets, and then work in a back loop, and then the remaining will be single and half double crochets. It's just so hard to tell about that. I can't really tell if it's ribbed. It doesn't look ribbed. No, I don't think that's ribbed. Okay. So now we're at the end of that double crochet row, and it's time to transition into making bobbles. And then we're going to double crochet into the first stitch, and then we're going to work in the back. We're going to work the front post of the next stitch, and we're going to be inserting 5 double crochets. I think that's 5. It's hard to talk and count at the same time. And then close that, and then we're going to double crochet into the next stitch, and then work, not here, but this one, 5 double crochets in the front post. 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we're getting that profound bobble that you see in the picture. And so then we double crochet in the next stitch, and then 5. We're going to make a puff stitch on the front post. Okay? And I am really liking these a lot. So then we double crochet, not this one, but this one, a puff stitch in the front post, 2, 3, 4, 5, double crochet, that's working out very nicely. And then the next one, once again, puff stitch on the front post, I think this was 5. It's so hard to count and talk at the same time. Pull through all. Yes, I like that a lot. Then we double crochet into the next one. Then work that front post. And continue to do so for the rest of this row. And I will meet you at the end. And I will start the next row. which will be a decrease of double crochets, because as you can see, using the puff stitch really expanded the beanie even more. And so I'm actually going to do a few decreases in the next row. No, that couldn't have been 5. And to bring the size down just a wee bit. So now I will slip stitch and chain 1, double crochet into the first chain, and I will decrease every 10 stitches. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, my yarn is pulling, and 10. This is the decrease. 1, 2, 3, 4, and where it's gappy, I tend to hold my work really close together to close that gap. And I lost count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and decrease in the 10th. So I'm going to do that the whole way around and meet you back at the end. Okay, I'm at the end of the row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10. 1, 2, and slip stitch into the first stitch. I must have snagged some extra plies. Okay, so with the decrease, it's starting to fold in just a little, and that's what we want. And I'm going to do a little check to see just how wide it is at the top, and I will continue to decrease. Let's see, every 10 rows once more. Here is where my first decrease will be. So that's 1 double crochet, another double crochet, and pull through all 3. So I'm going to continue the decrease in the same way in every 10th stitch, and I will meet back up with you at the end of the row. Maybe I should try a half double. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we will put 3 half double crochets into that 8th stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I will meet you back at the, you can see the wave starting here. I'll meet you back at the end of the row. So we're finishing up this row with the half double crochets. And now we're going to slip stitch into this first stitch, chain 1, and it's easy for me to see where those pivots are for the wave, to take notice of the wave. But if it's not for you, I should have said before, I'm sorry, to put a stitch marker at those points. But now I'm going to go in and make another, I'm going to go in and make a single crochet in that second back loop of the double crochet, of the half double crochet, excuse me. And this starts to blend for me, so I'm going to put my stitch marker back in. So I am going to work the same pattern in single crochets in the half double crochets back loop. So you can actually see the chain when you use the half double crochet, as opposed to just the line you see here in the single, or starting in the back of the back loop of a double crochet. You actually can see this cute little chain of stitches. So I will work a single crochet in those back loops until I get to, into each back loop, until I get to that cluster. And when we get to this cluster and we're here, we should be able to see that wave and continue to work. Excuse me. It will be that when you get to the cluster, it will be the one that's in the middle, because there are 3. Select the one that it's in the middle to repeat the 3 clusters into. So this one. 1, 2, 3. And so that ripple will be pronounced there. So we're coming up to another cluster, and we're going to do the same thing in that middle cluster, in the middle stitch. Here, I'm going to insert 3 single crochets, and so you can see that wave here. And we will continue in the same pattern until we get to the end of the row. Okay, so ending that row, let's chain 1, and then we're going to half double crochet in the first 7 stitches, and on the 8th stitch we will double crochet 1, 2, 3, 4, we can even go for 5. 5, and then we're going to half double crochet in the next 7 and repeat this pattern. So if you notice, it's going to make that ripple, that little wave that I keep talking about, and we'll come back in the next row and start working those back loops so that that wave shows. So I'm going to continue with the half double crochet 7, double crochet 5 in the 8th stitch, and meet you at the end. Okay, so I'm checking my work now, and I'm right on task to start working single crochets in the back loop of this row, as I mentioned previously. And it worked out really well, so that's what I did. I continued to work single crochets in the back loop of each stitch in this row. Okay friends, now we begin with our decreases, and how we'll decrease on this row is to double crochet into the first 5 stitches, and I think I may have done the first 7 stitches in the beginning of this row, but double crochet into the first 5 to 7 stitches and then decrease into the next 5 stitches by we're pulling up a loop in the next 5 stitches and then pulling them all together. So that's going to be the pattern sequence for this row. I'm sorry for the hiccup, but I believe the first few times I did this in the video, you'll see that I decreased after I did double crochets in the next 7 stitches, and then I would decrease pulling 5 stitches together to make one decrease, and then I think I switched into 5 stitches of double crochets before the decrease. Sorry about that, you guys, but what this particular technique does is it gathers where the shell stitch was made with the 5 crochets in one that created the ripple, and this gathers them together so that there isn't a huge increase in the beanie and making it too oversized. So this decrease comes in handy as you wear the beanie around below your crown towards your head. So I'm going to continue with the decreases in this row and meet you at the end of this row. So now at the start of the row, I'm going to chain 1, and I will be inserting a double crochet into each stitch until we get to the area of the ripple or the wave or whatever you want to call it. So until we get to this first double crochet from this row, I am going to decrease drastically across here to bunch it in and give this more shape. So I'll continue to make double crochets until that area right here. So now we're here. So that will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I will enter a double crochet here. And now I'm going to decrease 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this should draw it in and make that piece pronounced. And then another decrease, 1, 2, and here we are. Yes. So then I shall go on to double crochet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're getting close. 6. And then on that 7th, start decreasing. 2, 3, 4, 5, pull through all the loops. Decrease again, 1, 2, decrease, and once again, you can see that definition of that ripple. So we will continue the next 7 stitches and then begin the decrease. 2, 3, I wanted to decrease there. 4, 5, 6, and here we are at 7, and then we begin the decrease. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Pull through all the loops. There we go. One more decrease. 1 and 2. And we will continue with the same sequence of decreases, and here we have that profound ripple, like in the picture. So I'll finish this row and then I'll meet you back at the end. Okay friends, so now what we're going to do is we're going to repeat row 20, starting with that double crochet and then making a puff stitch in the front post of the next stitch. So we'll just repeat row 20 until we get to the end of the row. Okay friends, so this next row we're going to start working a decrease. We're going to insert 1 double crochet for the next 9 stitches, and then we're going to decrease, pulling 2 double crochets together in the 10th stitch, and we'll work this pattern all the way around until we get to the end of the row. So that's 1 double crochet into the 9 stitches and then decrease, pulling 2 together on the 10th stitch, and I'll meet you at the end of the row. Okay friends, so now we're at the last 4 or 5 rows left in the pattern. In this particular row we are going to work half double crochets in the back loop, and so that's in each stitch until you get to the end of the row, and we'll slip stitch and then start the next row to the next 3 rows with simple single crochets, and at the end of the row of course you will slip stitch. And so when you have the desired amount of single crochet rows that you want for the length of your brim, you just clip the yarn and weave in your ends, and it's that simple. So I hope you enjoyed this pattern. If you have any questions, let me know, and thank you so much for viewing.